The world met Northwest before she ever had the chance to introduce herself, before her first words, before her first memory, before she could even understand what fame was. She was born into it. Flashing cameras replaced family photo albums, headlines replaced lullabies, and the world watched, not quietly, not patiently, but constantly. From the moment she appeared in public, North wasn't treated like a child. She was treated like a moment, a headline, a trending topic. Every outfit she wore became news. Every expression was analyzed. Every movement was turned into content. To the public, it looked magical. To those paying close attention, it looked overwhelming. As she grew older, something subtle began to change. The carefree energy of early childhood slowly shifted. Her smile remained, but behind it, people started noticing something else, a kind of awareness no child should have so young. She spoke carefully, she reacted thoughtfully. She behaved like someone who knew she was being watched. And that's because she was. Millions of people weren't just watching her grow, they were forming opinions about her while she did. Then came the live stream, a simple moment, unscripted, casual, but viewers noticed something almost immediately. There was a pause in her voice, a hesitation before she spoke, a seriousness behind the humor. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was noticeable. And suddenly, people weren't just watching for entertainment anymore. They were watching with concern, because it didn't feel like a kid having fun. It felt like someone learning how to perform under pressure. To understand Northwest, you have to understand the world she was born into. A world where privacy doesn't exist, where cameras are always present, where every decision becomes a public debate. Her mother, Kim Kardashian, one of the most recognizable faces on earth. A woman who built an empire through media, branding, and visibility. Her father, Kanye West, a creative force, a musical genius, and one of the most unpredictable public figures of his generation. Together, they created a household unlike any other. A household where creativity was encouraged, where expression was celebrated, where limits were really ordinary. But fame changes the shape of family life. Normal rules don't apply. Mistakes become headlines. Arguments become public speculation. And when parents live their lives in the spotlight, their children inherit that light, whether they want it or not. North grew up surrounded by influence. Front row fashion shows before most kids attend school plays, studio sessions instead of playgrounds, adult conversations before childhood ones. To many, it looked like opportunity. But opportunity has a shadow, because when you grow up surrounded by adults, you learn adult expectations early. You learn how to perform, how to impress, how to stay on. And when the world already has an image of who you should be, discovering who you actually are becomes complicated. As Kanye's public struggles became more visible and Kim's business empire expanded, North stood quietly at the center of it all. Not asked to choose sides, not asked to speak, but absorbing everything, the pressure, the tension, the attention. And slowly, people began to notice something. North wasn't growing up like other kids. She was growing up like a public figure. For most children, growing up follows a rhythm: school in the morning, friends in the afternoon, family at night. Structure creates balance, routine creates safety. But for Northwest, that rhythm quietly began to change. At some point, the traditional idea of childhood began fading into something else, something more flexible, more unconventional, and far more public. The news came quietly. No big announcement. No headlines at first. North was no longer attending traditional school. Instead, her education shifted into something customized. Private instruction. Creative focused learning. A schedule designed around opportunity rather than normalcy. On paper, it sounded reasonable, but critics noticed something else. School isn't just about education. It's about social grounding. It's about being around people who don't care who your parents are. It's where kids learn how to fail without an audience, and once that environment disappears, something replaces it. Expectation. Because when a child's world becomes mostly adults, production teams, schedules, and cameras, the pressure changes. There's no room to blend in. No place to be invisible. No escape from attention, and that's when concern began to grow. Not because of what North was doing, but because of how much responsibility seemed to be placed on someone so young. The idea of preparing for the future suddenly felt rushed because childhood isn't meant to be preparation. It's meant to be lived. As North's public presence increased, something else happened at the same time. The internet got closer. Live streams, short clips, moments shared in real time. And unlike television or magazines, the internet doesn't filter its audience. Adults, strangers, critics, fans, all watching, all commenting, all reacting. And for the first time, the world saw North responding, not as a protected child, but as someone aware of being judged. Viewers noticed the shift. She spoke with confidence, but also caution. She laughed, but with restraint. She reacted like someone who understood how quickly things could be misunderstood. That awareness doesn't come naturally to children. It's learned, and it's usually learned through pressure. The comments came fast. Some supportive, some harsh, some deeply inappropriate for someone her age. And yet, she read them, reacted to them, processed them in real time. That's when people started asking difficult questions. Why is a child exposed to this level of scrutiny? Why are adult opinions shaping a child's self-image? And why does it feel like she's already carrying the weight of public expectation? The internet has no mercy. It doesn't pause for age. It doesn't soften criticism. It doesn't consider emotional development. And once someone becomes part of it, especially someone famous, it never truly lets go. What many viewers saw wasn't confidence. It was adaptation. A young person learning how to survive in a space that was never designed for children. By the time most children are figuring out who they want to be, North West was already being told who she was supposed to become. Not directly, not in words, but through attention. Through praise that came with conditions. Through criticism that arrived without warning. Through expectations that grew heavier with every public appearance. Fame has a strange way of rewriting reality. When a child sings, it's no longer play, it's performance. When a child jokes, it's no longer innocent. It's content. When a child expresses emotion, it becomes something to analyze. And slowly, the line between self-expression and expectation begins to blur. People started projecting futures onto her. She's going to be a star. She's just like her father. She's already iconic. But no one asked if she wanted any of that, because when millions of people are watching, choice becomes complicated. The pressure to be talented. The pressure to be confident. The pressure to live up to a name that already carries global weight. That kind of pressure doesn't scream. It settles quietly. It shows up in the way someone speaks more carefully. In how they laugh a second later than they used to. In the way joy starts to look rehearsed. And the scariest part. When pressure becomes normal, you stop recognizing it as pressure at all. At the center of it all stands a child caught between two powerful worlds. On one side, structure, image, control. On the other, creativity, emotion, freedom. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West represent two vastly different approaches to life, both intense, both influential, both shaped by fame in very different ways. Kim built an empire through discipline, branding, and consistency. Kanye built his legacy through raw expression, unpredictability, and emotion. North exists at the intersection of both. She's encouraged to be confident, but also polished. Creative, but presentable. Expressive, but careful. That balance is difficult for any adult. For a child, it can be overwhelming. And when parents themselves are under constant public scrutiny, their struggles don't stay private. They echo. Children pick up on tension. They feel shifts in energy. They notice when the world is watching. And even when love is present, which it clearly is, love alone can't block out noise this loud. Some fans believe North is being prepared for greatness. Others believe she's being asked to grow up too fast. But both sides agree on one thing: this is not a normal childhood. This is a life shaped by fame before identity has fully formed. And as the world watches her grow, the question remains: is she being guided toward her future? Or pushed toward a role she never asked to play? At some point, the conversation changed. It stopped being about fame. Stopped being about talent. Stopped being about headlines. And started becoming about responsibility. Viewers who once watched out of curiosity began watching with concern. Not because of something dramatic that happened, but because of what wasn't happening. There was no space to breathe. No room for anonymity. No chance to be ordinary, and that's when people began asking questions they hadn't asked before. Are we expecting too much from someone so young? Have we normalized watching children grow up under pressure? And when does admiration turn into intrusion? Social media, usually loud and reactive, grew oddly quiet at times. Not because people lost interest, but because the situation felt complicated. It's easy to criticize from the outside. It's harder to acknowledge that modern fame has no rulebook. This wasn't a scandal. It was something more unsettling. A slow realization that childhood, when lived publicly, doesn't come with rewind buttons, and once a moment is shared with millions, it can never be taken back. North West's story is still being written. She may grow into an artist, a creator, a businesswoman, or someone who chooses a completely different path, and that choice, whatever it becomes, should belong to her. Because behind the famous name, behind the cameras, behind the headlines, there is still a young person learning who she is. Not who the world wants her to be. Not who the internet expects. Not who fame demands. Just who she is. The truth is, fame doesn't raise children. Parents do, time does, space does, and sometimes, the greatest act of care isn't giving more access, but giving distance. Silence. Privacy. Room to grow. As the world continues to watch, one question remains unanswered. Will she be allowed to become herself? Or will the spotlight decide for her? Only time will tell.